Thanks for sharing your garden with us. And right now we're going to be joined by a special guest, Cheryl Hazeltine, author of a book that sounds kind of familiar to me, Central Texas Gardener.
That's true. Could I say we were first?
Yeah, you were first indeed.
Right. In 1980.
That's right. Well, welcome to Central Texas Gardener,
Thank
Cheryl
you. It's
Hazeltine.
really a pleasure to be here.
And the book is one that was a pioneering book for Texas gardening in many ways, and now has been fully updated by Texas A&M University Press.
Right.
And we're going to be talking about the book itself, but I want to start by talking about, those many years ago, what was the inspiration for Central Texas Gardener?
Well, shortly after moving here to Texas, incidentally from the Garden State of New Jersey, I met Joan Filveroff, who was here from Iowa, and we began sharing gardening disaster stories and lamenting the limited number of resources that were here. And one day Joan just said, well, why don't we write a book? I think I probably laughed, and then we went and we wrote the book. It took us about 5 years, but in that course, we did turn around from killing plants to growing plants. And we took the idea of writing a book to Ted Fisher, who was the county extension agent at the time, and he was very supportive. And so basically on the basis of our personal experience, Ted's handouts, remember those?
Right, yes,
some of them were
Ted's
mimeograph,
tips.
right? Ted's tips. And many, many conversations with the staffs of the local nurseries. And then it came time to shop it around. And we went to a number of local publishers, and they were very supportive of the project, and they seemed to like it. And but they all said the very same thing. Central Texas was much too small a market for such a book. So that is one of the changes that has occurred in those 40 years. And we had a mutual friend suggest that we go see Frank Wardlaw from Texas A&M University Press. And he came over, and he liked it. And we thought it was a done deal, but then he said, you have to finish the book before I can absolutely accept it. And we worked hard on that, and we did it. Joan's daughter, Amy, typed it on erasable bond with 2 onion skin carbon copies. I still have the original manuscript. And
This is such a different world that we live in, right?
But the key thing here is we were not allowed any photographs, not black and white, not color, none. And Joan and I could not imagine a gardening book without illustrations.
But it was the drawings.
Yes, so that's when we commissioned the local artist, Kate Berquist, who did the drawings for us.
Which were lovely.
They were lovely. I think I included 2 of them in this edition just out of
right.
Well,
it was a terrific book then, and it has now been fully updated, and of course, growing on all the different changes. In 1980, it was a different world. Now, I started doing a radio program, a garden radio program in Austin in 1983, and I remember all the questions back then were from little blue-haired ladies asking about their dying azaleas. That was the gardening world of Austin in the early 1980s, it seemed like.
Yes, it's true, and also the home landscape was a typical spec house was given 1 or 2 Arizona ashes, 5 or 6,
which are dead now, by the way.
5 or 6 5-gallon broadleaf evergreen shrubs,
pittosporums,
right, and ligustrum,
right,
and sod
Poodle
the front yard.
Sod
the front yard was St. Augustine. And, it's amazing how many people lived in those houses for 30 or 40 years. With occasionally a little color with impatiens or petunias.
Right.
But that has all changed now.
Well, and let's start talking about those changes, because, our understanding of what it takes to be successful as gardeners has changed. But I think that's one part of it. But also, it's just a whole different person is gardening now, really. I mean, we have young people who are very interested in design and the environment and lots of other concerns that are being brought to the backyard that have kind of really pushed the changes along.
Right. Well, design, I think, has been driven by new people coming into Central Texas, by the explosion of information. We're just subjected to so much information, and water conservation.
Yeah.
We need new plant material.
Right.
And I actually think also the housing boom was also a major factor. All of a sudden you saw island gardens, curb gardens, people using their landscapes for self-expression the way they did on the interior of their house.
Right, right.
And now you have even vegetable gardens in the front yard, which
unheard of.
Right, unheard of, and probably frowned upon too by the neighbors.
I'm sure there was. It's like you see purple houses now in Austin. You see vegetable gardens in the front yard.
Exactly, it's wonderful.
Yes,
I think the whole region looks terrific, including commercial landscapes. I think a lot of the cities' ordinances to encourage landscaping has been just wonderful.
Well, and it starts right from the very basics. We never thought about the soil,
right?
Back in the 1980s, or though, we would recommend or were recommended to buy sandy loam, for example.
Right.
Well, now we know that we were, shooting ourselves in the foot,
right?
Or the roots,
right? Exactly, right. Well, soil science has changed everything, and as you said, soil was just something where you stuck the plants and then you poured on the NPK.
Yeah.
And nowadays it's all about feeding the soil. You feed the soil. Soil is a living organism. If you feed the soil will take care of the plants, provided you select the appropriate plant for the area.
Right. So feeding the soil is one thing that I think has really been certainly a major mind shift for us. Also, just the plant materials, and you just referenced that, the appropriate plant materials. Right. I don't get calls about azaleas anymore. Right. I don't see azaleas in the nurseries anymore. Right. And it's because of this whole attitudinal shift, really, about what's expected and what's appropriate for our gardens.
Right, and I think I have to confess, I still have some azaleas, but I think this summer may do them in. They're on their way out for a few years, and I'm no longer babying them. I think, of course, the xeriscape plants were very important, and with them came the agaves and yuccas and the ornamental grasses, and all these new plants also brought great architectural elements to the landscape scene.
Yeah, and that's great. When I think of Austin gardening now, I think of it in two ways. One is this kind of cutting edge organic approach, water conservation approach, just an environmentally friendly approach. But on the other end, I think of the spectrum of these cool, funky designs, all accented by these really striking plants that seem to be so popular in our city, like the agaves and the yuccas.
Right. Previously, our main plants were, as I said, broadleaf evergreens that, they didn't even provide seasonal change, and they were just there all the time. They were rather constant, and the design is much richer and fuller. And also, I think we have gardening for wildlife, and that brings, whether the gardener is totally aware of it or not, a major shift in philosophy and attitude. Because once you're planting for birds or butterflies, you're no longer interested in a perfectly unchewed leaf. In fact, you go out and you say, oh, what's wrong with my button bush? Nobody is eating it. and once you get to that point, you're thinking entirely differently about the appearance of the landscape.
Right. And it used to be it's almost classical call in from my old radio show days. It's like, help! I saw a bug in my garden. Right. Call in the army with massive chemical warfare because of one insect sighting.
That's true. I mean, that's not an
Didn't matter what kind
exaggeration.
of insect it was.
Right. Well, nobody stopped to find out. And now we know that no longer is it desirable, but you don't want to kill every single bug because anything that would be left would be resistant to the chemicals that we have.
Right. Lots of wisdom that's been accrued in the book and over these past 30 years.
I can't believe that when I started out gardening, I was a Chlordane and Dursban user.
And you're still alive to
I'm
tell
still alive. Yes.
That's amazing in and of itself. But
And now I have
many of us remember that.
Right.
You know, and that's what we were taught. That this is the way to do it, right?
Right. I use no pesticides at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have no need to.
No, and I'm in the same boat.
Right.
A hearty jet of water is
Right.
a pretty effective pesticide
Right.
for most of the things that I deal
Yeah.
with. Well, Cheryl, the book is, it's been freshly updated with lots of great color images, and not just line drawings, but and again the accumulated wisdom of 30 years. So it's a pleasure to have you on, and by the way, thanks for sharing Central Texas Gardener with us here at KLRU TV.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to be part of the family.
Well, an important part of the family and a source of inspiration for many of us back in the 80s. And yes, Central Texas has grown as a market, hasn't it? Well, thank you again for being a part of the gardening scene here and on the program. And coming up next, it's our friend Daphne Richards.